Wat als de toekomst en de geschiedenis samensmelten? En de Silicon Valley techbro?
The engineer hero. That's such a classic archetype.
En de Texas cowboy één worden?
We're the techbro mixing with Texas cowboy ideals. The special techbro, right?
Dit is wat er gebeurt wanneer Elon Musk science fiction en western bij elkaar brengt. Waar komt deze mix van ideeën vandaan? En waarom slaat het juist hier zo aan?
Why Austin? So we need a place where we can be really big.
Met de opening van de Tesla Gigafactory markeert Elon Musk zijn komst in Austin. De techmiljardair heeft Silicon Valley achter zich gelaten en is neergestreken in de hoofdstad van Texas om hier zijn zakenimperium verder uit te breiden. Dit zijn de buren van Elon Musk. Een kleine greep uit de bijna 1 miljoen inwoners van Austin. Door hun ogen bekijken we wat er gebeurt met Austin wanneer een van de rijkste mensen ter wereld neerstrijkt.
People ask dystopian novelists where they get their material. It's just like the good dystopias come from the material of the observed world. You know, just look around.
Science fiction schrijver en tech-advocaat Chris Brown hoeft niet verder deur uit om zich in een dystopische roman te wanen. In de straten van Austin zoeven futuristische cybertrucks en zelfrijdende taxis voorbij. Het voelt als de toekomst, maar voor hem is het vaak ook een herinnering aan het verleden.
Did you see that? There's nobody driving the car.
In de ideeën van Musk weerklinken echo's uit science fiction klassiekers van decennia geleden.
I mean, certainly a business like SpaceX, that's like pure science fictional storytelling.
The critical breakthrough that's needed for us to become a spacefaring civilization is to make space travel like air travel.
It's like exciting to people. It's like the stuff I grew up, like I was a little kid, I was born in the mid-60s, right? Like I can just remember seeing on a black and white TV the first, astronauts walking around on the moon, and that idea of like space exploration, of human space exploration, as an expression and extension of the kind of fantasies of colonial expansion that are so intrinsic to the, American identity, even in the hemispheric sense. And so, yeah, he's really good at harnessing those kinds of narratives and yoking it with entrepreneurial storytelling.
Elon Musk noemt science fiction vaak als inspiratiebron. In verschillende interviews noemt hij The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy een van de belangrijkste boeken die hij las.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
En hij refereert meermaals naar sci-fi klassiekers zoals The Foundations van schrijver Isaac Asimov. Vooral bij die laatste speelt technologie een belangrijke rol.
So you have this idea of like creating stories that are around the tools more than the people, right? That's kind of what the origin of science fiction is.
Het is een geliefd genre in de techwereld.
Certainly the 90s era internet visionaries, they were almost all people who'd grown up reading the science fiction from the so-called golden age of kind of, especially right after World War II up into the 60s. And then also of like the 80s stuff,
Volgens Chris laat Musk zich niet alleen inspireren, maar toont hij ook overeenkomsten met een klassiek sci-fi personage.
The engineer hero. That's such a classic archetype. They're just I alone have the tools as a human being to come up with the tools to solve the urgent problem at hand.
Eventually, all life on Earth will be destroyed by the sun. And so we do, at some point, need to be a multi-planet civilization.
That idea of I'm the hero here to save us from the disaster that's looming.
And you're going to be the guy to put us closer to where we need to be to get to Mars.
We're headed there, yeah.
In science fiction bestaat er een subgenre waarbij vaak één man de mensheid redt. The cozy catastrophe.
It's sort of the last survivors kind of narrative where there's typically one probably middle-class protagonist, a man, and he's like the only remaining survivor of some disaster that has fallen humanity.
Een voorbeeld is de film The Omega Man uit 1971.
This is the film adaptation version from the really cheesy Charlton Heston movie, The Omega Man, from the early 70s, in which the protagonist, played by Charlton Heston in the movie, is
the last man on Earth.
The only uninfected survivor of a viral plague that has infected everyone in Los Angeles, at least, and probably on the whole planet, and turned them into zombies. But what you realize, and especially like when you see that movie, is that he's not the last man. He's not the last human being around. Like, he's surrounded by a community of people, but he's no longer capable of relating with them because he's so kind of deeply invested in his own sort of archetypal pursuit, which very much shows up, as I hear it, in some of the rhetoric of Elon Musk, of like, we've got to get off this planet.
If you don't become a multi-planet civilization, then you're simply waiting around until you die from a self-inflicted wound or from some natural disaster like the dinosaurs.
Van Chris gaan we even verderop naar de Universiteit van Texas in Austin. Geograaf en promovendus Claire Fitch doet onderzoek naar de techcultuur in haar stad.
I mean, there's a lot of science fiction mythos that I think drive this whole culture right now. There's all this sort of like recurring imagery and ways of employing the language of sci-fi that I think a lot of the people developing technology do come from these like childhood dreams of being excited about a tech and then learning that they could make it themselves, right? And really sort of creating the science fiction future that they want.
Claire ziet dat de komst van de nieuwe techbros het leven in de stad verandert.
I centered it on Austin, just living here and watching how much it was changing the city, and also how quite large these communities of new tech bros coming into the city became. A lot of them being transplants.
Deze zogenoemde transplants zijn mensen zoals Musk die van buiten de metropool naar Austin komen.
When Texas started becoming the center for Musk and other tech developers in more recent decades, you saw this really firm transplantation of the population of Silicon Valley, of the San Francisco surrounding area, straight into Austin, from Seattle, Washington as well, where you have this sort of lift up of employees of a certain city, drop them down in the new company headquarters here. Especially when COVID hit, there was a lot of movement here, politically driven as well, because Texas didn't really have restrictions on COVID. At least in Austin, like bars and restaurants were for the most part still open.
Take everything with a pinch of salt. Who knows what's going to happen? But it looks like we are in a positive direction.
So people, I think, felt like this was also a place to exercise this sort of techno-liberal identity, right, of being this sort of free terrain for folks to move and operate as they please.
Claire bezoekt en organiseert evenementen en feesten waar techbros op afkomen. Uit de interviews en gesprekken die ze met hen voert, komt het individualistische wereldbeeld naar voren dat ook terug te vinden is in oude science fiction.
Having this sort of ability to succeed as an individual depends on mastery of technology and accumulation of capital through the mastery of technology. At one extreme of it, it becomes, I am creating the technologies that are dictating the future, right? At the other end, it becomes, I need to keep up with this system. I need to learn how to code within it if I want to be employed, if I want to have a future in this world at all.
De techbros doen haar denken aan de cowboys en kolonisten die vroeger de lakens uitdeelden in Texas.
Settler masculinities, cowboy masculinities, and sort of this frontierist idea of the bootstraps American man that can be in Texas as this new frontier and dominate the landscape and move west and sort of reap resources from the landscape here. And so when you have these two forms of masculine identity merging with each other, both have this imaginary of either cyberspace as a frontier or the west of America, both have this strong individualism of subjecthood. And when they meet, I think you find masculinism taking these new shapes, where the tech bro mixing with Texas cowboy ideals. You do have this sort of this special text bro, right, that has really particular relationships to land, to community, to the future. And I think in a lot of ways they meld pretty perfectly.
Deze techbros, zoals Claire ze noemt, zien in Elon Musk een haast religieus leider.
So in my mind it has, it follows suit of a whole lot of replacement of religious idols, or however you find sort of meaning coming from a role model or a figure that you want to lay your trust in.
I love memes. I love Elon and his memes. So hopefully tomorrow he'll be there to accept it.
And so I think in order to grow trust around that, there has to have been this massive sort of cult of personality that forms around him as someone you can't quite understand, someone weird, but someone brilliant, this savant and this sort of speaker for the future that feels quite spiritual to me in a lot of ways.
Chris vraagt zich bezorgd af waar de visie van Elon Musk, die zo is doordrongen van de science-fiction verhalen uit zijn boekenkast, uiteindelijk toe zal leiden.
The first time I went to South Padre Island with my family, which was just a few years ago, was that summer of 2023, which was like the hottest summer in recorded history. The water at the beach was basically the same temperature as the baths we run for our daughter, right? And then in the distance, you could see like the rockets like shining. And those things, they even look like they were designed by people trying to make them look more like things from, 1960s science fiction things. And you're sitting there, you're like, we're in the middle of a climate disaster. You can feel it while you're out there trying to like help your kid have fun at the beach. And here you see like the richest people on the planet figuring out ways to get off it. And that fantasy of playing out that kind of cozy catastrophe story of making yourself the hero, and I don't know. I'm suspicious of it, and all out for community-based narratives, but those don't make as easily compelling stories.
In de volgende aflevering, wie moet er wijken voor Elon Musk?
Tesla bought that rehearsal space and turned it into the Tesla showroom.
En hoe is Austin sinds zijn komst veranderd?
Through comedy, there is definitely a right-wing influence.